Okay. All right. In this video, we're going to do standard deviation of a frequency table. All right, so you know how to do the mean of a frequency table, and this one's pretty similar to that in lots of respects. You also know how to do standard deviation of a list of raw data, but this is standard deviation of a frequency table. So as usual, I'm going to share my screen with you and talk you through it. It's pretty short, pretty quick, shouldn't take us but a minute. Okay, here's the formula right here, and it's in your books for the standard deviation of a frequency table. Now remember, a formula is only good if you understand what the variables are and what they represent. So S, of course, is standard deviation. N's your number of pieces of data. N's that always your total in every formula. It's not your number of classes, it's your number of pieces of data. All right. F is frequency, so that's pretty simple. In every formula, when you see X, it stands for your data. But now we don't have our list of raw data anymore. So just like when we did mean of a table, the X in a frequency table is going to be your midpoint. Okay. So suppose I wanted the standard deviation of this table right here. All right. Well, the first thing I've got to find is N. So for N, I've got to know how many numbers were in my original list. Well, there were 5 numbers between 10 and 14 inclusive. There were 8 numbers between these 2 numbers, including those, and 3 here. So there must have been 5 plus 8 plus 3. There must have been 16 numbers in all in my original list. So N is not 3. It's not number of classes. It's number of pieces of data. So this N and this N and this N are all 16. So that's why there's 16 here, here, and here. Now I've got to go do this bracket. Okay. Excuse me. So I've got to go inside, remember parentheses are first. So inside this parenthesis, I've got multiplication, I've got exponents. So remember your order of operations, exponents come before multiplication. So I've got to find every X and square it. Now what was X? Remember what I said, in a table, X are your midpoints. So remember how you get midpoints. You take the lower limit and the upper limit and you add them and divide by 2. So 10 plus 14 is 24, and divide that by 2, you get 12. So you can look back in your notes and review how to find a midpoint if you don't remember. So 17 is the midpoint of this class, and 22 is the midpoint of this class. It's halfway between 20 and 24. But I don't need just my X's, I need the squares of my X's. So 12 times 12 is 144. 17 squared is 289, and 22 times itself is 484. So I'm going to take every one of these squared midpoints and multiply them by their frequency. So here's my frequency of 5. There's my squared number, 144. So 5 times 144 is 720. And then the frequency of 8 times its squared midpoint, 289, gives me 2,312. And then 3 times 484 gives me 1,452. So pause the video and you multiply those numbers and make sure that that's what you get. You double check my answers. If they're not the same, email me. I could have made a mistake. So what am I going to do with all these answers? So once I squared the midpoints and once I multiplied every one of those squared numbers by the frequency, it says, okay, now add those answers up. Remember that summation symbol means add. So when I added these numbers up, I got 4,484. So that's why right here in this bracket, I've got 4,484. It's what I got when I added all of those answers. All right, so minus and minus. Now notice this bracket, the square is not on the inside like here, it's on the outside. So I've got to do my parenthesis first, which says frequency, but just times X, not X squared. So just F times the midpoint. So 5 times 12 just gives me 60. And 8 times 17 is 136. And then 3 times 22 is 66. So I said every frequency times the midpoint. Then what do I do next? I have to add them up. So when I added 60, 136, and 66, I got 262. Okay. So that's why 262 goes there. All right. So my formula is filled in. Now, I want you to notice this N's only multiplied by this first bracket, not by both brackets. So the 16 is only multiplied by 4,484. So that's where I got 71,744. Then when you square 262, you get 68,644. But I do not say this bracket times the 16. Now, notice what happens. if this second number comes out to be bigger than this first number, of course, that means you must have made a mistake because you're not going to be taking the square root of a negative number. So at least write me a note if you can't find your mistake. I know this isn't right, but I can't find my mistake. So you can get partial credit. So 71,744 minus this number right here gave me 3,100. And then when I said 16 times 15, I got 240. So then when I did 3,100 divided by 240, I got almost 13, a little, more than 12 in my last steps to take the square root. And then I rounded. Okay, remember this squiggles, this tilde means approximately equal to, so it warns me that somebody that I rounded. So when I took the square root of this number, I got like 3.59 and it kept going. So I didn't chop it off, I rounded it off. So never chop off the number. If the next number is 5 or bigger, you round up. If the next number is 4 or smaller, you keep it the same. We call that rounding down. So that's why it's 3 6/10 and not 3 5/10. Okay. So make sure that you kind of pause the video and you walk through all of these steps yourself and double check these numbers and make sure that they're right. Okay. So in this formula, N's my number of pieces of data, F is my frequency, and X is my midpoint because I don't have my original data anymore. If they wanted the variance for this table, you take that number, of course, and you would square it. Okay. So make sure that you can find the mean of raw data and the mean of a frequency table, and make sure that you can find standard deviation of a raw list of data. And now you should be able to find standard deviation of a frequency table. Okay. So make sure that if you have any questions that you email me.